In March 1944, Rome was the scene of one of the most brutal massacres carried out by the Third Reich. Not only because of the number of deaths, but because of the macabre method of killing. A pit used as a mine was converted into a gigantic tomb, where more than 330 bodies executed in a single afternoon rested. Behind that atrocity was a man named Erich Priebke, the second in command at the Gestapo based in Italy. He was a ruthless individual, unscrupulous, and willing to do anything to please Adolf Hitler through his ties with the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, his hands stained with the blood of children. The elderly and women were free for decades, until an incredible investigation found his whereabouts. In this installment of military history, we want to tell you about the life, work, and death of this monster of the Reich. His biography is full of hate, with an outcome that lives up to that sordidness, since even after his death, he continued to cause protests and conflicts between countries. Let's start with this shocking journey in time to meet one of the last Nazi criminals to be arrested. Erich Priebke was born on July 29, 1913 in Hennigsdorf, which was then part of the Kingdom of Prussia. Little is known about his childhood, but if we are guided by interviews given by himself, his parents died when he was small, and he was raised almost entirely by his uncle until he was of working age. Already as a teenager, he went through several cities such as Rome, London, and Berlin, working in hotels, but his destiny was not in tourism, but in the brutal politics that was germinating in Germany. In 1936, Priebke began to operate within the Waffen-SS of the National Socialist Party. Due to his good performance, he joined the Gestapo as an interpreter. He was the only one with a great knowledge of Italian from all that time living abroad. This is how Priebke became a fundamental link for the Third Reich, since he managed all operations on Italian soil, as well as in other European territories. On March 23, 1944, members of the partisan resistance of the Partito d'Azione, or Action Party, killed 33 German soldiers. The Germans belonged to a company of the Waffen-SS military police and were eliminated with a homemade bomb hidden in a garbage cart. When the soldiers crossed the Via Rasella, located in Rome, the device exploded, killing almost the entire unit, as well as 2 Italian civilians. It was one of the largest attacks carried out by the Italian resistance during World War II, and the impact was felt as far away as Berlin. When Hitler found out about the event, he ordered in retaliation to execute 10 partisans for every German killed with the homemade bomb, which is equivalent to 330 executions. Out of pure morbidity and sadism, the sum was rounded up to 335 Italians. Killing over 300 anti-fascist militants in a single day was no easy task. It was necessary to identify, gather, and transport individuals who often hid in the outskirts, defending themselves with weapons and homemade bombs. That's why the decision was made to target individuals who were already imprisoned or who had gone through the penal system. The ones tasked with drafting the blacklist were Erich Priebke and Herbert Kappler, the head of the German police and security services in Rome during World War II. After reviewing databases from various prisons, the demanded victims by the Führer were assembled. The group was diverse, and also included individuals who were free. Among the chosen ones were inmates sentenced to death, prisoners awaiting trial for political crimes, detained Jews awaiting deportation orders to extermination camps, and even some Italians accused of terrorism who were free due to lack of evidence. Bringing them together required a joint effort between the German SS and local fascist police. It was nothing that the homicidal zeal of these organizations couldn't accomplish. On March 24, 1944, Erich Priebke and Karl Haas drove German army trucks and transported the subjects selected for the massacre. The 335 victims were taken to the Ardeatine caves, abandoned mines on the outskirts of Rome. The individuals had their arms tied behind their backs and were not informed about the nature of the operation, although they surely suspected the intentions of their captors. Once in the caves, the prisoners were ushered into the space in groups of 5 and shot at point-blank range. Each displayed a gunshot wound to the back of the head, a terrifying precision. After the murder was completed, German army demolition experts sealed the entrance to the site with a controlled explosion, entombing within the earth one of the most brutal war crimes perpetrated in Italy. The images we will reproduce correspond to the opening of that infamous rock tomb, a process initiated in 1947. Priebke's career as a liaison between Berlin and Rome continued steadfastly until the Allies completely conquered the Italian peninsula. The American forces managed to seize positions of great strategic importance at such a rapid pace that high-ranking officials like the protagonist of this video didn't have time to escape. Erich Priebke ended up in a prisoner camp where he waited for several months for his trial to begin. The German was stationed in a prison in Rimini, which was managed by the United Kingdom. However, in 1946, he managed to escape under mysterious circumstances. According to Priebke himself, the escape was made possible with the help of the Church, and in particular, Alois Hudal, an Austrian bishop who operated an illegal network of visas and clandestine flights. After his escape, Priebke lived with relatives in the northern city of Sturdzing. During this time, he was baptized again, both symbolically and in his documentation. On September 13, 1948, he adopted the identity of Otto Pape, under which he lived for at least a year in Italy. After a while, the German began to suspect that the American intelligence had managed to locate him, so he embarked on a new journey, this time to a much more distant destination, Argentine Patagonia. Despite being accused of brutal war crimes, Priebke lived in South America as a free man for over 50 years. He chose the city of San Carlos de Bariloche as his new home, perhaps because the mountains and cold climate reminded him of his homeland. In March 1994, a team of investigators from ABC News, led by producer Harry Phillips, carried out impeccable journalistic work. Using documentation dating back to the 1940s, they managed to trace Erich Priebke to the Argentine city, where he had been living for decades. One of the keys was the book published by Esteban Buch, titled The Painter of Swiss Argentina, in which, among other high-ranking officials, he denounced the alleged Otto Pape as guilty of indescribable massacres in Italy. His presence in Argentine territory coincided with the wave of National Socialist officers who traveled there to hide from international authorities, appealing to distance and anonymity. Throughout 1994, the ABC News team continued their search for documents in Buenos Aires, Washington, London, Berlin, and Jerusalem, uncovering numerous chronicles about the Germans' past. His relationship with the Gestapo was well documented. But there was one archive of astonishing brutality in the London Public Records Office. A confession made by Erich Priebke during his time in the prisoner camp was archived. In that document, the man confirmed his role in the massacre of the Ardeatine caves. Additionally, there were transport authorizations to extermination camps signed by Priebke, also demonstrating that he was aware of the final solution despite being in Italy. It's impossible to calculate the number of people who died because of him. The ABC News team followed the criminal to his job at a high school. They approached the man and interviewed him directly to confirm their suspicions about the elderly man's true identity. Contrary to what one might assume, the murderer had no qualms about admitting the immoral actions he carried out during World War II.
Mr. Priebke, Sam Donaldson of American television.
Yes.
Mr. Priebke?
Yes.
You were in the Gestapo in 1944, were you not? In Rome?
Yes, in Rome, yes. You know, the communists blow up a group of our German soldiers.
Yes.
For every German soldier, 10 Italians had to die.
Civilians?
Well, civilians, they have been morally terrorists.
But children were killed.
No, not at all.
14-year-old boys were killed.
Priebke's smile is terrifying. The German justified himself by claiming he was only following orders from the Gestapo and that he wasn't the highest authority in Rome. Furthermore, he asserted that the victims were terrorists and deserved such an end. The German denied that children were murdered on that fateful day, but among the analyzed remains, the bones of at least 3 young individuals aged 14 or younger were found. He did admit to compiling that infamous list, and he crossed off each name one by one as the individuals were eliminated, with a shot to the back of the head, as if it were a slaughterhouse. ABC's journalistic report was too raw and powerful. The fact that a war criminal could live freely, without worries and without remorse, shocked the entire international community. In another interview, this time outside a church, the encounter was not so pleasant.
Criminal de guerra Priebke recibe la comunión. Finalizada la ceremonia, saluda a los presentes que desfilan ante él como si estuviera despidiéndose de los invitados a una fiesta. Le pregunto a Priebke si va a aceptar la demanda de extradición de Alemania, pero su abogado me asegura que no hará declaraciones.
The Argentine authorities arrested Priebke, but due to his advanced age, he was not placed in a jail cell. Instead, he was placed under house arrest in his residence in San Carlos de Bariloche. The next step was extradition and the corresponding trial, but that proved to be a very complex mission for both the local jurors and the authorities in Italy and Germany. Priebke's lawyers used various tactics to delay the extradition process. For example, they demanded that all documents in Italian dating from World War II be fully translated into Spanish. Due to the volume of material, this process could take up to 2 years. Fortunately, the Argentine court denied that request, but other appeals prolonged the criminal's journey to Europe. The strongest argument presented by the defense was that the case could not be brought to trial since, according to Argentine law, it had expired. In an interview with a local news program, the murderer appeared hopeful and in good spirits.
Que acostumbrarme nuevamente a eso.
Me dice que fue a misa hoy.
Sí, fuimos a misa, dar las gracias a Dios, ¿no? Siempre hay que tener esperanza, ¿no? Si no, uno se va a morir, ¿no? Bueno, le agradezco a todos que me han apoyado, ¿no?
¿Todos? ¿No ha habido gente que lo ha tratado mal?
Bueno, algunos.
In March 1995, after 9 months of delay, European authorities and representatives of Jewish organizations received the commitment from Argentine President Carlos Menem that Priebke would be sent to pay for his crimes. This was not immediate. Numerous delays caused by the defense effectively postponed the transfer until, in May of the same year, a federal court accepted the Italian extradition request for crimes against humanity, a category that has no expiration date. In 1996, an elderly Priebke was boarded onto a plane that flew directly from Bariloche to Ciampino Airport. This military facility is located just a few kilometers from the Ardeatine caves, the site where the massacre took place many decades earlier. The killer had returned to the scene of the crime. In court, Erich Priebke pleaded not guilty to all charges, but in a rather peculiar way. He did not deny committing the atrocities he carried out in Italy, but he rejected any moral responsibility for them. According to his stance, the massacre of the supposed partisan terrorists was solely the responsibility of his superiors and those attackers who killed 33 Germans with a homemade bomb. Additionally, he added that the order to eliminate over 300 people came directly from Adolf Hitler's office, so disobeying was not a viable option. During the judicial process, the man's involvement in the preparation of the mass murder became clear. Not only did he take up arms and kill, but he was also part of a complex organization that made the massacre possible. However, as incredible as it may seem, the Italian court considered his arguments to be solid, and that he was merely following orders from his superiors. On August 1, 1996, orders were issued for his immediate release, but a member of the Italian Ministry of Justice warned that there was a high chance he would be arrested again. The initial decision of the Italian authorities shocked the entire international community. Experts around the world wondered how it was possible to dismiss such crimes that, ultimately, were fully acknowledged by the accused. The relatives of the victims protested, arguing that the judges completely ignored the value of human life. On the other hand, experts in international law stated that if no action was taken, Italy would be condoning crimes against humanity, setting a dangerous precedent. Previously, we emphasized the figures of the victims of this massacre. Following the vengeful orders of the Führer to the letter, the punishment to be carried out equated to 330 people. However, both Priebke and Haas chose to add 5 additional victims. This proactive attitude towards the slaughter eliminated any argument related to obedience to superiors. Erich Priebke was not only fulfilling the demands, but he also operated to increase the death toll of the Ardeatine caves. Those 5 additional deaths played a fundamental role in the trial against these National Socialist criminals. Finally, after numerous appeals, in March 1998, Priebke was sentenced to life imprisonment. But due to his advanced age and Italian laws, he served under house arrest in Rome, Italy. He spent almost 15 years in confinement, and with his death, an incredible controversy erupted. Priebke died in Rome on October 11, 2013, at the age of 100. As his last wish, he asked for his remains to be taken to Argentina so that they could be buried next to his wife, but the Argentine government refused. The Diocese of Rome issued an unprecedented ban, no funeral rites could be conducted in honor of the German in any of the Roman Catholic churches. As for Germany, the hometown of this war criminal refused to receive the body, fearing that the burial place could become a pilgrimage site for neo-Nazis. No one wanted to take responsibility for the war criminal's mortal remains. Even after his death, his figure caused discomfort and concern among the authorities. Finally, Father Florian Abrahamovich, a former priest of a secret society dedicated to St. Pius, offered to hold a funeral for Priebke in the city of Albano Laziale. During the ritual, the presence of police officers was necessary to prevent clashes between fascist sympathizers and anti-fascist protesters. The images we will see next correspond to that day, which resembled more of a political protest than a funeral procession. The Germans' family was not present because, due to the riots, they could not access the city. The situation became uncontrollable, so the coffin carrying Priebke's remains was transferred to a nearby military base near Rome to be buried in a secret location, or at least that's what lawyer Paolo Giacchi claimed. The legal representative added, "This satisfied the family and fulfilled ethical and spiritual requirements." A controversial statement, as his client was buried in secret, with shame and surrounded by strangers. His farewell from this earth was in a context of violence and contempt, confirming the saying, "You reap what you sow." The outcome of Erich Priebke's story is bittersweet. Although justice eventually caught up with him, and he had to face his sins in some way, even after death, the fact remains that he spent decades as a free man. For over 50 years, he roamed through Patagonia without any remorse for the massacres he carried out for the Third Reich. Cases like this renew the questions that arose after the world learned of the atrocities of Nazism. How can someone be capable of such evil? And what is the fair punishment for such crimes? The answers to these questions have puzzled historians and philosophers. We would like to invite you to join that interesting debate. Leave us your perspective in the comments on how international law should deal with genocides like Priebke. This brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this content related to World War II, we invite you to subscribe and activate notifications. Without further ado, we bid farewell until the next installment of Military History. Thank you for joining us.